I'm an anesthesiologist in York, Pennsylvania. I'm the chairman of anesthesia at a large level 1 trauma center called York Hospital. We have 550 beds, 20 operating rooms, so I'm a pretty busy guy. But when I'm not busy in the operating room, I'm busy with my collecting habit, and I want to talk a little bit about that today. I have been collecting medical, surgical, bloodletting instruments, art related to the history of medicine for, over 30 years at this point, since I was in high school. You might wonder why I'm standing next to a very bizarre wax head being operated upon. That's because this is what I collect. It's oddities. It's strange things from the history of medicine that tell a story of the history of medicine. I have to say my wife and 4 kids kind of wonder why I stand next to a wax head from time to time as well. Collecting is a real passion, and I'm pretty passionate about it to the point of building my own museum in my backyard. We call it the Arbatier Museum of Medical History, and it's all around us. So why don't you pan around and show what the museum looks like, and then I'll take you on a little tour. There are all sorts of unusual surgical sets and bloodletting things and heat lamps and leech jars. You got to keep your leeches nice and safe. The collection sort of started off being a lot of bloodletting stuff, and actually the license plate on my car says leeches. So everyone in town here kind of knows that I'm the leech guy. They call me Dr. Doug. They know that Dr. Doug has a museum in his backyard and has collected for a very long time. I have all sorts of brain surgery sets here from the 18th century. They all tell a story. I've traveled the world collecting these things, the United States collecting these things. I've met a lot of really cool people along the way. I've had a lot of great adventures. An example is our friend back here. I bought at an auction in Christie's in London and actually brought it home on the plane with me, and had to convince them to let me bring such a crazy bulky thing right on the plane. So that was an interesting experience to have it tumble down the luggage receiving area at JFK Airport. So that was kind of interesting. And it made it in one piece, amazingly. All these things in here are for bloodletting. If you take a look, they are for drawing the blood out of patients. I have the bowls that they used to let the blood drip into downstairs and all sorts of materials. Kind of a little creepy to some people. Some people sort of run right past this one because they're sort of bizarre implements of torture, but nothing wrong with bizarre implements of torture. We have all sorts of surgical sets in the collection. I have about 200 surgical sets, many Civil War surgical sets, including the surgical set that did the very first amputation of the Civil War, which was done in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. Phenomenal story behind it. Dr. Norman owned that set, and it's really just Norman Smith, I should say, and it's just a phenomenal piece of American history, really. These are sets from the Civil War era, embalming sets for if the surgery didn't work out so well. I have post-mortem kits and embalming sets. And on the top shelf everywhere are leech jars, because you can never have too many leech jars, I think we would all agree. There's tremendous art related to the history of medicine and science. This is a great example of that. This is a man having brain surgery right here. There are brain surgery tools on the table. And then if you look to the left, we're unsure if this is the doctor giving his bill to the lady or possibly the preacher saying it's not going so well. So there he is right there. I think it's giving his bill. It was before HMOs. These are all Civil War surgical sets. These were actually used to do amputations in the Civil War. Now, just in case the place wasn't creepy enough, I have my little creepy papier-mâché man over here. This is French. Dr. Azou was a real artist, and he made these papier-mâché models showing all the parts of the human body, and all these pieces come off, and they're all hand-painted in papier-mâché. So we have a few body parts came off here. Maybe he had leprosy or something, I don't know. But I haven't been able to find out where to stick those on. You'd think I'm a doctor, I would know where to put all the pieces back, but it just hasn't worked out that way. This is a leech, because leeches did a lot of bloodletting. There were leeches in all of my leech jars up here, so I thought that would be really cool to have a papier-mâché leech. That's from about 1850. All this stuff is from the 17th century, that's the 1600s, right up to the 1800s. Once we get to the point of sterilization of surgical instruments, I lose my interest because they're not nearly as beautiful. The early medical and surgical instruments had all sorts of ivory handles, horn handles, ebony handles. They were pieces of art, really, that took years to make in some cases. And that's the beauty of it. And they all tell the story of the history of medicine. In order to also tell the story, I have my heroes up here, up top. These are famous physicians from the past: Edward Jenner, Benjamin Rush, John Hunter. These are the real greats. I'm waiting for an Arbiter plaque up there, but I haven't really made my mark in the history of medicine myself yet, but I'm still working on it. There's more anesthesia to be done. This is a really cool tapestry from the early 1800s, late 1700s, which shows a woman being bled. You see the blood running down her arm into basins. And what better centerpiece for the Arbiter Museum could there be? I see this museum as being sort of my home base for searching for oddities and unusual stuff all over America and the world. I travel to Europe, I travel all through the US looking for these great pieces of art from the history of medicine and surgery. More surgical sets. This is really cool. This is a set of 3 jars, honey leeches and tamarins. Now, this is called the garniture of jars. Pharmacies had these fancy looking jars in their windows to draw people in. You might wonder, what does honey have to do with leeches? Nothing really, but that's sort of how they put the jars together. Honey was used to compound medicines, and tamarins, I think, made you poop, so that was kind of important back then too. A lot of constipation with the diets that they had back then. These are some more leech jars, leech pots, leech application tubes. They would actually put leeches all over your body. So they would put it in the rectum, in the ear, in the eye, in the vagina. I mean, it was, if you had a body cavity, there had to be a leech in it at some point. This is a engraving in the back. If you can take a picture of that, of them putting leeches on that woman's neck. Over to the right over there, you can see her. She doesn't look very happy. There's that little dude with leeches in a glass jar. Kind of neat. Now, for people that were too sophisticated to have slimy leeches put all over their body, there's something called the artificial leech. And this is a cabinet of the world's largest collection of artificial leeches. Every device in this cabinet was made to mimic the bite of a leech. So they were mechanical little marvels that you would wind up, push the button, and it would make a triangular bite in the skin, all parts of your body, to mimic the bite of a leech. Kind of a cool thing. These things over here are not match safes. They look like cigarette cases or something, but every one of these cases had bleeding tools in them. Little devices that were to prick the skin and bleed the patient. This is our urology section. Back in the day, in the 1700s and earlier, a lot of people had trouble with bladder stones and kidney stones. So what would they do? They would have to cut them out. Now, this was before the age of anesthesia, before my profession even came into existence. And so what would they do? They would slice your perineum, the area between your genitals and your rectum. They would